Okay, sir.
So coming back to like agile project management, like we discussed, it is mostly a philosophy. When I say philosophy, the major change is here nobody is going to assign you a task, right? As a team, it is a self-organizing team, right? So all the team members have to get together and decide who is going to do what and timeline. So everything is self-decided, right? There is no role of a project manager as such in our traditional project manager. No, you have to complete this. Why it is not happening? So no micromanagement or in that kind of authority type of management is there. Here that will be somebody. So roles we have discussed: Scrum roles, stakeholders, business owners. Then somebody three essential roles: product owner, who is somebody like a business analyst. Those of you will get into business analyst role, kind of move into later on to a role of a product owner, who will have a good understanding from the customer side, right? So most of the times, the next career advancement for a business analyst to go and get into this product owner, right? Because you have an understanding how to basically requirement gathering and basically make it into a product backlog, which we'll discuss today, right? So this is where you will get the requirement from the customers and put it in a user story format, right? So that is the main work of a business analyst, creating those user story. So product owner is a main role. Then there is someone known as Scrum Master, right? Scrum Master, again, not necessarily a project manager, but what he looks into the process side of it. Are you following the correct processes? There is no conflict in between the team. If there is some help required from the external agencies, right? So you are getting this. So if you see in the last case, what I've given, and if some of you have done correctly, like gone through it at least, we'll see that okay, so there is a company, there is an outside company, right? And the outside company who is like hardware development is happening, and in this company we have divided team into 30 and 20 members. One is development team, one is operations teams. So there is no coordination between them. There is no coordination between this internal team and the external team, the third party team, right? So this is when you divide this. So it is not about the division of teams. You can make groups, but that integration has to happen, which is a role of a Scrum Master, right? He has to make sure that all the communication, all the teams are progressing. It is not in the same speed, but at least everybody remains connected, right? What is happening? Why there is a delay? It is not that okay, that team is not in my purview. I should not look into that, right? So that is something which was missing in this organization of or the management of the earlier. Then obviously the uh, most problematic thing is that when they're divided, they put most experienced team members into one team and less experienced freshers into another team. Ideally, teams should be balanced, right? Any kind of development team or operations team need to be balanced. Like some need of experience, some need of freshers, right? So this is where roles we have discussed: product owner, scrum master, then the obviously the development team. So the name they use development team, it doesn't mean that only the software developers, right? It can be applied across whoever is developing the product, process, or application, right? Then we discussed Scrum ceremonies, right? What are the different type of meetings? So in the beginnings, there will be something called a. So if you go back to just a small recap of sprint planning, right? So it is a one-day event when product owner, business side, maybe some business owner, your scrum master, and your development team will get together, discuss the product backlog items, right? And from that, they will take something to sprint backlog, right? Then daily scrum. This is a 15 minutes meeting every day. So it will be basically the scrum master, product owner won't be like kind of part of this meeting, because every day Scrum Master will be the one who will be calling this 15 minutes call. So make sure that everybody, obviously, if it is different teams, different Scrum Masters will be having that kind of meeting. Sprint review, whatever you have decided, okay, this is a 3 week sprint or 4 week sprint. After that, what you have completed, you have committed something, what you committed and how you commit. So that we'll discuss today. But whatever you have committed, whether you have completed, how much you have completed, right? And ideally it is something known as a potentially shippable product increment, right? So every time your sprint is getting over, there should be something which can be tested by the customer, right? Think about in this way: if we are developing a website, right? So if I say that okay, I have written only the 200 lines of HTML CS code, and we are looking into registering a domain name, nothing to show to a customer. That cannot be your potentially shippable product increment, right? Ideally, what should have happened? So in the first page, we have created at least the basic page layout. So when I show that to in my first print, I show that to my customer, they'll look and say that, okay, no, change the color or change the template, right? Then in the next increment, I'll maybe add certain products or certain services. In the third sprint, I might add a payment system, right? Integrate into our backend payment system, cash on delivery, all those systems, right? So this is where is the potentially shippable product increment. So every time a sprint is getting completed, you have something to show to the customers, show to the product owners, right? So it cannot be just that, okay, we have written 100 lines of code or 1000 lines of code and we are still working, right? So then once sprint review happens, again, it is an informal review along with the product owner, business owners, other stakeholders. Then sprint retrospective, it is basically learning. What did we learn, right? And we do calculate something called sprint velocity. I'll show you what is that. So we try to find out that, okay, how did you do, right? It is basically look back and see that, okay, what could have, so there are 4 questions, right? What worked well, what could have been improved, what will we commit during the next sprint, right? Because once you understand that, okay, how like quickly or how fast or how productively you are able to complete the work, then we'll decide like kind of for the next sprint, what are the kind of commitment you are going to do, right? So this is where only the Scrum team members will be available for this meeting, right? So any doubt on the Scrum roles or the Scrum ceremony? So today we are going to like discuss some of the important concepts. It will be useful even if you don't get into the product owner role. It is basically kind of a user requirement specification, right, or requirement gathering and prioritization, right? Some of you, if you just get into business analyst role also, this will be useful. So this is something known as product backlog, sprint backlog, and potentially shippable product. So product backlog, like we discussed in our like kind of traditional project management, it is a scope document, right? So only difference is that a scope document in a traditional project management will be given in the beginning. So in the like tenders, if you have seen, like some of you like physically seen those tender files, we used to have room full of tender files. 23. One tender will have 24 big 500 pages document, right? Out of that, 5 or 6 will be scope document. That means in the beginning we are saying that, okay, this is what we want to get it done, right? So we are defining our scope clearly. But like we discussed in Agile, beginning nobody will come. Let's say if I'm developing a e-commerce site, so nobody will have a full idea that, okay, how that e-commerce website should look like, right? So they'll have certain basic ideas. Okay, so I should have a customers should have an option to add products to their this cart. They should have an option for different payment systems. They should have option for a wish list. They can also look into recommender, so there will be some recommender system provided into that website, so that they can get a recommendation that customers who have got this or bought this kind of item also have got bought these kind of items. Then there will be feedback, ratings, all those complaint. So these are the basic what like I can just get into Amazon or Flipkart website, look into the features, and as a user I'll tell that, okay, so you start with this. So I'll give a list of ideas, list of user stories, right? So user story will be like something like we have discussed in the beginning, right? As a customer, I want to have this. So you have to write in the form of a end user, right? So if it is for a website, e-commerce website, as a user of this e-commerce website, I need a shopping cart. So I need the whatever that feature for doing what? For adding certain items which I want to purchase into that item or into that basket or into that cart. Or as a e-commerce user, I want. So as a user, I want, what do you want? I want a wish list. So that I can add items to that list which I can buy later on, right? So this is a format of a user story, right? So like that, user stories will be listed in the beginning, and so that list which is dynamic, that means it can keep changing, and that is the biggest difference between traditional project management and agile project management. So users can come later on and can say that, okay, add these items to the product backlog, right? So this is the list of user stories which need to be done to complete the project, right? So from that product backlog, which is a list of lot of user stories, so I take some of the items for a particular sprint. Let's say I'm starting the project. So my first sprint, I'm going to add, which is first, obviously first thing is to create a like a skeleton website, right? At least have those template on, right? Template of a e-commerce website on. So that is my first task, or at least by the first sprint, I should be able to do that and connect it to a domain name, connect that into my like kind of backend server and all those things, right? At least those things should be done in the beginning, right? So those three items, three user stories will be part of my sprint. So that is those user stories which get into your sprint, that is known as sprint backlog. Then you complete that, and ideally those all those items, user stories, what you are taking in a sprint should be such that by the end of that sprint, you should have something to show to the customer, show to the product owner. Okay, we have completed this work, right? Which is visible, right? So this is the meaning of potentially shippable product increment, PSPI. Okay. So now the point is, how do you like, because in traditional project management, there is a project manager, he will discuss with you, and we have done that scheduling techniques, right? So we'll discuss and tell you that okay, how much time it will take, what is the cost, what are the risks, what are the challenges. So all things will be in a MES project or a Jira or any kind of software which you're using, right? Now, when we are talking about a product backlog, right? So this is where little bit interesting, right? So we write features added to the backlog commonly written in a story format. So that is a user story, right? And this is where we put something called a story point, right? And we'll discuss what is difference between story point and number of hours. In a traditional project management, what happens? Okay, this is a coding work or this is a CS plus HTML work. It will take 3 days for one developer, maybe 20 to 24 hours, and we'll put some additional time as a backup, maybe 4 days, right? 32 hours or 30 to 32 hours. So that is what will be discussed, and you are entering that into a project management software, right? But here, and then again, you put a risk register, right? You say that okay, what can be the challenge of doing this coding, all those things. Then you might put something called a quality management, quality assurance, right? All those things separately. But when you're talking about agile project management, all of those things taken together, right? So there are three parts of a story point: risk, complexity, and repetitions. Risk is basically whether we know this task, whether in our team people are there who have already done that work. So that is a knownness, right? Risk you are mitigating. Complexity, we might know that task, but it is actually very like demanding work, right? It is a challenging work. Then repetition, whether we have done it earlier, right? Whether we have kind of this, our team is experienced enough to complete this work. They have been doing this work earlier, right? So keeping that in mind, you'll put some points to a story, right? And I'll show you those examples. But generally, what just put that some number, and what is that sequence? There is no absolute value, right? So the basic idea is to say that okay, this task is a let's say 1 point, right? Then any task which is almost will take double the effort, double the risk, or double the challenge, right? So will be 2 points, right? So this is where the relative points come into picture, right? In a traditional project management, we keep certain absolute value, absolute days. It will take 3 days. It will take 8 hours. It will take 15 hours. Here it is always a relative to the story points, like whatever other story points you are considering, right? In the product backlog, there are a lot of story points, 100 or 150 story point, user stories you have to complete, right? Not story point, user stories to complete, right? Now, once you decide that, okay, this is something very kind of a low effort work, let's say it is 2 story point, right? Then something which you believe 2 to 2.5 or 3 times, you will put it into a 5 story point, right? So this is where most of the times it is not that only Fibonacci sequence used. Sometimes it is normal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, normal linear sequence also utilized. But most of the times Fibonacci sequence is used 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, right? Fibonacci sequence, I guess all of you might know. So the next number is the addition of the previous two numbers, right? So 1, the next number is 1, Third number will be 1 plus 1, 2. Fourth number will be 2 plus 1, 3. Fifth number will be 3 to 5. Then sixth number will be 5 plus 3, 8. Right? Then 8, 13 like that. Right? 21. So now once you in a product backlog, you put down those lists that okay, so there are let's say 100 user stories. For each user story, there are certain story points, right? If it is more than 21 story point, again you divide into low number, like kind of divide that work, divide that user story into smaller user stories. Then you size them. Ask the team to group the items by size still silently, right? Smallest to largest. So smallest will be around 1, 2, largest maybe 21. So more than 21 generally we do not take. So put them into different groups, right? 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. So these are different Fibonacci series, right? 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. So this is what Fibonacci series. 1, 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 5 is 13, 13 plus 8 is not actually 20 is written, it is 21, right? So maximum point we take into 21 point, right? So if something is greater than 21, again we divide into smaller user stories so that it is within 20. Now what happens? These are the list of items. So now you decide which story point or which user stories you will take into your first sprint. Then try to complete that, right? So story point. So let us try to get an example. Story point estimation. So let's say. So how do we decide? Get the team together. Pick a medium size PBI. PBI is a product backlog item. PB is product backlog. I is item, right? Take an item which you have already done, or any team members know about that. So somebody, let's say, have done the initial coding part, right? So they'll say that yes, yes. So this is a medium effort, medium risk. So we'll put a story point of 5. And how do they decide actually? That is something known as planning poker. So everybody will write that. So that development team members, what do they believe, right? Whether it is 1 point, 3 point, 5 points, whatever is written here, then they'll just show it, right? Then if everybody is agreeing, right, yes, it is 5, then yes. So no like kind of conflict, and they'll say that okay, this is a story point which is 5 worth, 5 like this is a user story which is 5 story point worth. If they like somebody has told 1, somebody 5, somebody 13, right? Then discussion will happen. Why somebody is taking it as 13? There might be some risks. Other team members are not known. They do not know, right? So that is where discussion will happen. Then all the teams again they will based on the discussion will write that something what we have discussed earlier also, right? In a qualitative risk also same, right? What is the risk, important, priority? Everybody discusses and agrees upon, right? So the main idea is find a user story which you have done or as a team you have already done earlier, right? So take that as a base. Then anything which is less effort than that, that will be lower story point. Anything which has higher effort than that would have higher story point, right? Again, this is a not a absolute value. Remember, 5 doesn't mean 5 hours. It is a relative value. So this I know this will take medium effort. So anything which is taking less than that will put is 3, 2, 1, or anything which is taking more than that will take 8, 13, 21. Generally, like I said, up to 21, most of the times any story point, any user story having story point greater than 21, we try to reduce it to like a little bit less or divide that user story into 2 or 3 user stories, different user stories. Always estimate undone PBI is in the context already done PBI, right? So any product backlog item you are estimating has to happen which you have already done, right? It is always relative, right? So how does it different from our normal traditional project management? In traditional project management, okay, this task will take 5 hours, other task will 10 hours, or any task is 8 hours. So that is a absolute value of hours or effort. Here, what additionally we are taking in a story point, apart from the effort it is taking, also we are looking into the risk, right? Also, we are looking into whether we have done it earlier, repetitiveness, right? So these 3 items what we discussed, risk, complexity, and repetition. These 3 things are taken together when we are calculating or estimating a story point. In a normal hour basis, it is just effort it will take. Whether we have failed earlier in that work by doing that 8 hours or 6 hours, we do not know. These things are generally taken into consideration when estimating a story point. Anybody having any doubt on how like story point estimation happens or how it is different than our traditional hour, where we say that okay, this will take 5 hours or this will take 30 hours, right? Anybody having any question? So this is where you'll put into, like I showed you in the beginning, right? So one website user story, interface user story, database user story. These are each are very low effort, low risk, right? So they are into value one. So if you say look into 21 interface user story database, so building that database interface, user interface and database integration is very difficult, risky, challenging, right? It might have happened that in your team members only one or two or like persons only know it, others are not experienced in it, right? So this is why it is given a higher story point, right? Relative to whatever is other story point, right? If let's say something else is there, creating a machine learning model, so in comparison to that, this user story will be maybe 3 or 5, right? So this is where your comparison of story point, right? It is a relative value, right? Then once you have listed all your product backlog, take something and put into sprint. What you will do in completing a sprint one. So these should be, we are starting the project. Yes, sir.
Sir, in the last slide, sir, you have told that it will not increase to 21, but it goes to 34, sir, in a Fibonacci
Yes.
series.
So no, it can go to infinite also, right? Generally. So what I said, generally it is not that we do not take anything beyond 21. We divide into lesser work. So that doesn't mean that there won't be anything beyond 34 or let's say 55, right? So there will be point like when I'm putting into a product backlog. So there will be point will be 55, which will be 89, right? So that is again a very big. So like I showed here, right? 21, 40, 80, right? So these are very big items, right? So what generally we do not estimate that big item, because if that is so risky, so big items, we divide into a lesser story point, right? So generally we try to keep it within 21. So again, repeating it is generally, it doesn't mean there is a hard and bound rule. If some teams say that we'll get into 34 or 58, they are okay to do it. So agile is again, like I said, it is a very kind of a lenient, so it is not kind of you have to follow this as long as you're able to complete the task without any conflict, right? So they are like flexible in that way. So there is no hard and fast written rule that okay, you have to be within 21, but generally that is followed.
Okay, sir.
Clear?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So then generally again, like though we said that effort we do not consider, but effort is a part of that, right? So in a traditional project management, hours are only effort. Here story point is effort, risk, your complexity and your repetition, right? So along with your effort, you are taking into consideration risk, complexity and repetition, right? So ideally, whatever task you are estimating under that story point, what are the tasks you have to complete? Ideally, should be between 4 and 16 hours work. If you remember what we discussed in our work package, any work package generally should be within 8 to 80 hours, right? That time in the traditional project management, idea is any work package you are building should be within between 1 day to 10 days. 10 working days means 80 hours of work, right? So similarly, something here, you divide into kind of story point, and each story point, let's say 3 story point or a 5 story point, how ideally hours will take. Because now remember why we are doing this. Now once I know that okay, these are the story point and these are the like let's say 5 or 6 user stories I'm going to take it in my sprint one. Now I have to decide how much time it will take for my sprint one to complete, whether it is 2 weeks, 1 week. So any sprint has to be between 1 to 4 weeks, or two, it's generally between 2 to 4 weeks, right? So that is something again we have to decide how much effort it will take. Again, it is very relative sense, right? Because it is not like in a project manual somebody will put okay, somebody has said you will take 16 hours, you could not complete within 16 hours, right? But to give a timeline to the scrum master and product owner, okay, we'll take a sprint of 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, we'll be trying to complete this much of work, right? So this is where effort estimation is additionally required. Task on sprint backlog are never assigned, right? This is what I've been repeating. Tasks are signed off for. right? This is the biggest difference between traditional project management where tasks are assigned. Project manager will say that, okay, you have to do this, and this is the work estimation, this is the time estimation which we have discussed with you. Here, as a volunteer, you have to volunteer that, okay, I will do, right? So just imagine the scenario. If any task is given to your project team members to you, so how many of you volunteer, right? And this is the biggest challenge of in Agile, right? When you see that team members have to volunteer, if you ask yourself how many of you will volunteer for a work if nobody is assigning you, right? The biggest challenge in Agile implementation is the same philosophy which made it successful. For a startup, it works because startup everybody gets together. It is a chaotic system, and everybody is starting to create something new. Like existing company, everybody has a kind of a fixed rule. So developer will say that, okay, I am into development team, why I should look into what testing team problem is happening. A testing team member will say that, uh, let them, like, they are anyhow enjoying, they're not doing any work, why should I bother about them, right? So this is where the implementation of Agile is mostly about the, like, in case there is a failure happens, failure of that philosophy, right? Where the assignment doesn't happen up, assignment of task doesn't happen. It is always about the taking ownership, volunteering for a work, volunteering for a task. So by team members during daily scrum according to priority and member skills, right? Obviously, it is not that, okay, if you do not know, but at least you should make that attempt, right? Most of the times what will happen, you might not know that. So that is where in the daily scrum meeting we'll say that, okay, I had done it maybe 3 years back, I'm not that much sure, can somebody else help me, right? So scrum master should be in a position to take some guidance from other team members outside this team, which will help this person who has volunteered for, right? And this is where the most challenge in daily scrum meeting will happen, that nobody or most of the people won't volunteer. They'll say that, okay, I'm already doing so much, right? And that is the biggest problem in Agile implementation. So let's say in the product backlog items, I have these two items, for example, out of that login page. So that is my first sprint I'm going to do this work. So these are the, again, tasks I'm dividing: development of the login page HTML, development of, so these are the different tasks of that user story, right? So, and these are the estimated hours. So once I know that, okay, it will take 160 hours, 160 hours means per day, means if I consider 8 hours, it is around 20 days, right? 20 days means 21, 3 weeks. So I'll take a 3 week as my sprint duration, right? So, but once you decide in the beginning, 3 weeks my sprint duration, sprint 2 also will be 3 weeks, sprint 3 also will be 3 weeks. Every sprint has to be of the same duration. And that is the interesting part. So that is where, so in the beginning, you should be aware of what are the product backlog items. So later on, you cannot say that, okay, I cannot complete sprint 2 in 3 weeks, right? So this is where intelligently in the beginning, when the team is deciding what should be the sprint duration, right? So most of the times what happens, they don't like kind of get into that debate much. They take the highest time, right? So 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks is the range. So most of the teams try to take the highest, like kind of month long sprint, right? But not necessarily always. Somewhere where like kind of product need to be launched very quickly, increment has to happen very quickly, a lot of competition in the market. So that is where it can be in the 2 or 3 weeks also, right? Anybody having any doubt? So now, how do you estimate, right? How productive we are, right? Because in the earlier case, what we used to have, that is this we did something called earned value management, right? So we do schedule variance index or cost variance index. We calculated that and we saw that, okay, whether we are doing good or bad, right? Here, because there is no hours, nothing is there, no money is associated. Here only the story points are associated. How do you do that? Let's say these are my product backlog items. There are different items. So for my first print, I take the top 5, 6 items, right? So this is in the order of the priority. 8, 5, 5, 3, 5. So these are the story point. So it means it is a complex or it is a little bit effort work. Then 5 is medium, 3 is low effort work, right? So team pulls the desired number of stories into a current sprint. So in the sprint we are going to, so this team in the first sprint, they committed that, okay, we'll be completing how much? 8, 5, 5, 3, 5, total 26 story point of work, right? So again, this is a story point, not hours. This is a story point, maybe 3 weeks time or 4 weeks time it will take to complete. And they start working. By the end of the sprint, they are able to complete the first 3 sprint. 3 is almost going to complete, 5 is not complete, right? So now what has happened? So they have only completed 855. So total 18 points, right? So that whatever point you complete, story point you complete in a single sprint, so that is known as your velocity. Velocity means the running. So we are looking into sprint means running very fast for a small distance, right? Velocity means how fast you are running, right, in a particular direction. So estimated velocity in the beginning when you thought, so we'll complete this much 26 story point, but we were actually able to complete 18 story point, right? Then obviously we'll discuss during the retrospective why we could not complete 26 story point, what went wrong. Then for the next sprint, you'll decide that actually how much you can complete, right? So above a timeline, like if you go maybe 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, right? You'll come to know that what is the velocity of your team, how much productive your team are, right? So what you'll do, so in a sprint one, let's say you are able to complete 38 points, sprint two 29 points, three again 38, four actually were much more productive, we were able to complete 39 story points. So average is 36. So every 3 months or 4 months you'll try to find out what is your average sprint velocity, right? Then try to improve that, right? So ideally agile means, so that is that PDC approach, right? So you try to measure what you are doing and try to improve upon that, right? Try to improve upon your sprint velocity. And once you have your sprint velocity, you'll put this into something like this, right? How much work is remaining, right? So this is something known as burn down chart in terms of number of hours, or if I put into a value points or the story point, right? In the each iteration, how much work we are able to complete. But so this is something again a burn down velocity, right? If it is very steep, that means we are completing work very fast. So the number of story point we are completing is very fast. Our velocity is very like high or very good. If it is like little bit low slope or less slope, that means we are going very slow, right? So this basically, if you remember, we did this in our earlier also in the dashboard, project dashboard, how much work is remaining, right? So each sprint, so in a sprint one, let's say I have taken it, so ideally it should be not more than 30. So 4 weeks is 28 days. So how much time is remaining, right? And how like kind of how many story points or how many effort, how many hours we have completed the work, right? So this is where our burn down chart and something called burn up chart. In the burn up chart, you'll keep adding, right? It will be opposite of this. Here, what it is showing, what's remaining, right? So this is where the slope is coming down. If I start putting how much work we have completed, right? So in the first day, let's say only one story point. In the second day, 3 story point. So it will get added up, right? So that is where we will be putting a burn up chart, right? So ideally it will be like visible to, it will be kind of a either in a printout, and today's world nobody is putting this printouts, they put in a like kind of a digital screen that okay, what is our speed or what is our velocity of completing this story point, right? So this we have discussed potentially shippable product increment. So every time after your sprint, you are showing to the owners, product owner and your stakeholders, how much work you have completed in a form of potentially shippable a product increment, right? So that means they should be able to see that okay, how much like work you have completed, right? You cannot just say that okay, we're writing, doing some work, we're testing something, right? Each increment should interface seamlessly with the all prior increments. So this is where intelligently the team has to divide the work, right? How what they're going to do in the sprint. So I'll first create a login page, then database integration will happen, then I'll include my payment integration. So I'll kind of incorporate different payment mechanisms. Then at the end, there will be something called the comments, feedback, all those things available, right? So this is what you decide that okay, in this sprint we'll complete this. In the first sprint, we'll create a login page for customer, right? So we'll go and show to the client that okay, this login page is ready. Can you give your feedback? Then we'll move into the next one, looking into let's say database integration. So In the backend, we'll have our database ready. Then we are integrating, and that again linked to the domain name, right? So this is what each sprint you have something to show to the customers. So that is what the release planning will happen, right? So sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, like that, lot of sprints happen. Big projects that will be around 40, 50, 60 sprints. Scrum team's work is managed with the product backlog. This we have discussed. Team does not do anything for any stakeholder unless it is in the backlog, right? So this is very important. Anything a user wants, so it is not that they'll call and tell you, okay, include this. So anything has to be put in the product backlog. Then in the next sprint, in the sprint review meeting, uh, all team members, product owner, your scrum master will discuss this. So this is a new item, then estimation will happen. Then only if it is very urgent, it will be put into a sprint, right? If it is not in your sprint backlog, right, nothing can be done, right? It will be only taken in the completion of sprint, right? The product owner is responsible for prioritizing the backlog, right? So this is what product owner plays a big role in the product backlog, right? Sprint backlog is managed by the team members, scrum master. Product backlog is ownership lies with the product owner, right? Because he is the interface between team members and your customers, right? External customers. So generally, every wherever you will work, right? If they're managing with a team, it will be a very kind of clear, like kind of a whiteboard where all these stickers will be there. What are in the backlog, what is on deck, in progress, and done, right? So generally, we'll move from one items to other, right? So in this sprint, we have these sprint items as our backlog item. What are kind of next on deck means going to be done next, right? So in the pipeline, what are in progress, what exactly right now we are doing, and what we have already completed, right? So this is kind of an overview of what we have discussed so far. So there are scrum roles, product owners, scrum master, development team, stakeholders, key artifacts, product backlog, sprint backlogs. Sprint goal is basically what we are going to achieve. So we'll create a login page in this sprint, or we'll create a database integration in this sprint, right? One word or one line summary, right? Blocks list. So this is basically kind of a every time this sprint retrospective happens, right? A scrum master will make a list that what are the challenges happening, like something like a risk register, but again it is not like a points are assigned here. Basically, what are the things can be improved, right? Increment. So this is any of what we discussed for potentially shippable product increment. So these are different type of meetings: sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review. Something is not mentioned here, which is sprint retrospective, which happens after your sprint review. So generally, 30 days, basically 28 days, 28 to 30 days, 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks is maximum. So that's what I told. Like maximum times people will take that 4 weeks or 1 month of time because they want to play safe, little bit of safe. Because once you decide, okay, I'll complete within 2 weeks, every sprint you have to complete within 2 weeks, right? So this is how the structure happens. So initially product backlog, then sprint planning. So this every sprint you complete some work, then again product backlog gets updated, again you start the work, right? So this is the overview of your agile project management, only the scrum part, right? So scrum is a technique under agile philosophy. There are other techniques. Extreme programming is one. Then there is something called large scale scrum, LSS, right? So there are different techniques. There are different kind of methods under agile project management. We are only discuss scrum, which is a very basic. So at least if you're clear on this, others are kind of related to the scrum planning or the scrum approach. These, at least if you go through the slides, at least you can appear for that. After certain experience, you can appear for that scrum master. So these are the questions will be generally they ask. What is the daily scrum? What is the duration of a daily scrum? What is the role of a product owner? Who owns a product backlog, right? So that's all, I guess. That's all for your project management. And any last questions, doubt? So that's all. Please be ready for your quiz in the next class. That will be your last quiz. And in case some of you have not kind of, yes, sir.
Sir, actually, I want to say, sir, whatever we have read in the project management from this side, sir. So, sir, it is only applicable to the IT's company. I never look it into the core company basics like civil, mechanical.
No,
Generally,
only
it is
these two
followed in
classes, right?
IT's company.
These two classes, what we discussed, only IT company.
Yes,
Whatever
sir.
we have discussed in the beginning, all are from
Earlier,
tradition.
yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. So
Sir,
all,
earlier one is followed, sir, but these two classes are only followed in IT
yes,
companies.
yes. This is basically not only IT. It started with software. Yes, basically, if you are working in a bank, fintech company, application, this let's say Uber, Ola. So this is where this kind of techniques will be. Traditional project management, unless you have scope clear, nobody will start a work on the infrastructure project. Right. So that is where the waterfall model or what we discussed in the earlier classes that will be used.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Chalo, take care. See you next class. Bye bye.